Hello, everyone. Welcome and good evening. I'm glad to have you over for another one of MindGrasp's live sessions. I am yours truly, Adrian Montano, a trainer and excellence coach here at MindGrasp. And today I'm glad to continue the series that I began earlier this week about hypnosis, dispelling some very common misconceptions about hypnosis, and in order to do so, talking about what exactly the roles of the unconscious mind are, how it functions both by itself and especially in tandem with our conscious mind, because understanding them really makes a difference in ensuring your day-to-day wellness and your overall well-being in life. So I've talked about, for instance, how the unconscious mind is responsible for storing all of our memories, how it is the domain of all of emotions, how it organizes memories both temporally and atemporally, and in relationship with the emotions in conjunction with the mechanics of the Gestalt. And I explained what the Gestalt mechanics is. I've also talked about how the unconscious mind represses negatively charged memories and how it keeps them repressed for our safety, for our protection, and only presents them to us back again when it perceives that we've gotten the learnings that can allow us to reframe those negative emotions, to get the learnings so that it can let go of the emotions. Now, if some of you might doubt that the unconscious mind is in charge of all memories, just try to remember your telephone number or your email address, and it might just pop up into your mind. And question is for you, where was it before I asked the question? Were you just going there saying such and such at gmail.com, such and such at gmail.com? No, obviously not. It was in your unconscious mind, ready to be presented to you when you addressed the right question. And in fact, retrieving emotions, but I will get into this in one of our future presentations. Retrieving stored memories doesn't so much have to do with our capacity for storing memories, because we all have it, but rather with our capacity to engage with the unconscious mind. And I'd say this is one of the key benefits in learning to communicate with our own unconscious mind beyond our well-being. The capacity to access memories and use them at will, because this is the key to both learning and also demonstrated, concrete, a very highly pragmatic proficiency in whatever fields you're practicing. So that's one of the roles of the unconscious mind. Another thing the unconscious mind does is it controls all bodily functions and the functioning of the body. So I gave you the example, and this is the key to the mind-body connection. And yesterday I invited you just for a second to become depressed. And you might have noticed that your body got into a certain physiology. You probably brought back to your mind an image or a specific memory of a moment that was negatively charged with that respective state, with that respective emotion. And immediately that made you feel in a certain way, and it made your body act out in a certain way. But if you were to do the opposite, because what I'm guessing happened, in a live course, I could actually see you and see your actual physical positions, but now I cannot. It's only one way. But if I were to guess, I'd guess that for most of you, what happened was that you hunched your head over, and you hunched your back and your shoulders, and your hands dropped, and so on, and your body just sank, pretty much, because that's the overall feature for the physiology of depression in pretty much all people. But if you were to stand up with your back straight and look up and put a grin on your face. Oh, hello, Roy, and hello, Catalina. Welcome to the talk. If you were to stand up and put a grin on your face and look up to the ceiling, or if you're outside, look up to the stars, to the sky, and clench your fists and start clenching all your muscles from your ankles all the way up your calves, all the way up your higher leg, your bum, your back, your abdominals. You might not know they're there, but I assure you they're still there. And your chest muscles and your shoulders and your neck. And just keep that radiant, beaming smile. Hello, Dragos, welcome, on your face, and keep looking up. And just try to be depressed for a second. You'll notice that it's impossible to do it because that specific physiology just doesn't allow the feeling. So this is how the functioning of the unconscious mind relates to the functioning of our bodies. This is the key to the mind-body connection, and how, in fact, taking charge of the flow of images, which are related and they're connected with sounds and feelings in our minds, has to do directly with our physical behaviors, our physical states of well-being. Noticing it, owning up to it, is one of the keys to our everyday well-being. Next, we talked about how the unconscious mind has moral integrity, so the values that you've taken upon yourself during your formative years. Oh, hello, Georgia, welcome. The values that you've learned, you've absorbed during your formative years will keep guiding you through life. And this was one of the misconceptions that people had about hypnosis, that going into trance would give the hypnotist power over them and they could make them do godforsaken things or who knows what. But in fact, that's not possible, because your unconscious mind will not let you do anything, even when you're in trance, that's completely in disagreement with your moral values. So you will only do the things that you would already be willing to do when you're awake, when you're fully awake. And also we said that the unconscious mind is extremely serviable. It will deliver to you everything that you ask of it. And so it's really important to take care what exactly it is that you're asking your unconscious mind second by second. Now, going further today with the other roles of the unconscious mind, it is in charge, it controls all your perceptions, and it administers all your perceptions. So actually, one way to sharpen your senses, your sight, your hearing, your sense of touch, both your external kinesthetic sense, so your touch, but also your internal kinesthetic, your sense of the feelings inside your body. One way to do it is to get into a dialogue with your unconscious mind and ask it to keep sharpening your perception. Another thing that's important with respect to perception is that, I mentioned in one of our earlier talks how second by second there's 10 to 12 million, some would even say nowadays 20 million bits of information per second going towards our nervous system. And we can only handle 134 bits of information consciously, and the rest is deleted, distorted, or generalized. But what happens with the rest? Well, the unconscious mind perceives all of it. And if it's important for our preservation, for our safety, for our well-being, it will deliver hunches, insights in the form of, gut feelings, for lack of a better word, to us based on those perceptions, even if they're outside of our conscious awareness. So bottom line, trust your gut feelings. And I gave you the example of the driver of the sports pilot, Formula One pilot, who at one point just realized that there was something amiss happening, and he just realized it in a split second, and he stopped his car. And when the people who analyzed the event were looking over the tapes, they noticed that the crowd, instead of looking the normal way towards the racetrack, they were looking the other way, because they had noticed there was a car coming from the other direction, going in the wrong direction. And so the driver was on a collision course. But although it was outside of his conscious awareness, he got this split second feeling that something was off, something was amiss, and so he needed to stop, which is what he did, because he was well versed enough to listen to his hunch. And in fact, this is something that you can notice, and this is part of why we know it works, that high-performing athletes in particular, so people who have to be very much in tune with their bodies in what they do in their professional activity, they very often get these hunches or, feelings, gut feelings that deliver to them important intuitions about what they should do in order to reach their goals. Now, unfortunately, what happens in a lot of professions nowadays is that we tend to disconnect from our bodies. And hey, I'm speaking from my own experience here. I'm very much your classical example of a nerd, bookish nerd, who wasn't that okay with his body, who wasn't okay with the idea of feeling feelings and letting myself get insight from those feelings, until I realized that systematically disregarding them was getting to me to all the places to where I didn't want to be. Again and again and again. And at the point when I did my practitioner training, oh, hello, Alexandra, welcome. When I did my practitioner training in NLP and I started learning how to get into contact with my unconscious mind and the benefits that can derive from it, as well as especially from hypnosis and self-hypnosis in particular, I started to appreciate the importance of this role of listening to the hunches, and I put listening between inverted commas, quotation marks, because it's something beyond words. It's just that feeling that you know something, stemming from inside, blooming from inside. And yes, the Jedi, hello. The next role of the unconscious mind that I want to talk about is that it generates, it stores, and it distributes energy through the body. And when I say energy, I don't mean, a very new agey, disparate, not that specific, concrete sense of energy. I mean literal energy that you can physically sense and also that you can test with measuring devices. So you may have noticed, and I'm sure you've noticed, that there are things you do that even as you do them, you feel like, whoa, I'm getting so much energy and joy out of it. And by the time you're done with it, you actually feel more energetic than you were at the very beginning, at the beginning of doing it. And no wonder, because probably those things are in accordance with your values and, more importantly, and this will be the subject of one of my future talks, future live sessions, more importantly, with your life purpose. So with that sense, with that pattern, that when you are attuned to it, gives you the greatest sense of happiness, joy, and self-fulfillment. Hello, Laura, welcome. And Ioana as well, hello. So this is one of the things the unconscious mind does in order to support our body's functioning. And this is how it shows us that we are on the right path in terms of what's important to us and what makes us thrive, both physically, emotionally, mentally, and in all respects and in all areas of our lives. Now, on the other hand, there are those events when you do something, and as you're doing it, you can just feel the energy draining from you. And those are the kind of events, the kind of activities we obviously don't even want to think about, but sometimes we just find ourselves in that situation. And hello, tomorrow's Monday. Probably some of you were already thinking about the following week. And for me, that was one of my greatest motivations in starting up my own business and becoming an entrepreneur, because I wanted to look up to my work week rather than want to look away from it. So the question is, when you find yourself in one of these situations and basically your unconscious mind you feel the energy draining from you, that's basically the sign of your unconscious mind telling you, hey, this isn't really cut out for you, and what can you do differently? And it might sometimes be just doing the very same activity, but just shifting your focus and shifting your motivation. So for instance, I, for one, used to hate cleaning. I think most people lots of people can relate from this point of view. But the thing to keep in mind from it, and what actually shifted my perspective, I realized that when I vacuum, when I clean around the house, I can listen to podcasts and I can listen to interesting videos about history, about philosophy, and all of the things that interest me, or, about my field of work, neurolinguistics, and how to work with it for a thriving life. So once I started doing that, I didn't even mind the cleaning anymore, because it was just a natural part of the process. And actually, doing the movements with the body allowed me to affix the information, so to be very much in contact with my physical state when I got the learnings, and make it much more easy for me to access those learnings, access that information at a later time. So this is another one of the unconscious mind's roles. It's prime directives, as we call them in the field: generating and storing and disseminating, distributing energy through the body. Now, another thing the unconscious mind does, and this is also related to the body, is supporting our instincts and creating our habits. And when I work with individual clients, or even in groups, and I tell people about, the possibility of letting go of negative emotions, and especially, working one-on-one with people and telling them, hey, all that rage or that fear you used to have, you don't really need it, and you can keep safe and balanced without it, because that's a secondary response to a dangerous situation. It's not the anger itself or the fear itself that keep you safe, but it's rather your primary response, your primary instinct, which is fight or flight. And the anger or the fear only kick in afterwards, after you've gotten yourself to safety one way or another. And so we can take away, doing the process of timeline therapy, getting the learnings, allows the unconscious mind to just let go of that anger or fear, or some other examples: sadness, disappointment, shame, guilt, etc. But it doesn't take away the instinct, because the instinct is key to survival, and your unconscious mind will preserve it no matter what. Hello, Andrea, welcome. So having all of it all together, the unconscious mind preserves your instincts and it creates habits. So doing something repeatedly will give a message to your unconscious mind that, hey, this is important for me. And so the unconscious mind will want to turn it into something that you can do automatically without consciously thinking about it. Because, as I said, your conscious mind only has a very limited span, only those 134 bits per second. But the unconscious mind can focus on so much more. And so the unconscious mind wants to serve you. As I mentioned, it's servable. So it will learn, it will store, it will turn into a habit those things which you do repeatedly, and it will clear up the focus of your conscious mind. In fact, that's one of the main reasons why I give my clients tasks when I work with them individually, and we do the clearing of all their negative habits from the past, all the emotional triggers that were holding them back from doing all the things they wanted to do and they knew, in fact, they could do in order to get to the goal where they wanted to be, and to get what they wanted to have in their lives as an overall experience and as a concrete target. So the habits are settled in and are installed the more people do something repeatedly. So once we do the clearing, I tell them, okay, now you've gotten rid of, so for instance, let's say I'm working with somebody who has a phobia, and I did have a client who had a fear of flying, and I told her, okay, next time you book a flight, take a picture of yourself. Or somebody who had a fear, who had a limiting decision around doing the work they needed to do in their business. and they were a fashion designer. So what they wanted to get done was their next collection. So my task was obviously, okay, get to work. Now that we've done the clearing, you have the emotional space and the mental free space, headspace to get to work and tell me how it goes. So that integrates the behavior and makes it automatic, makes it an integral, a natural part of their new life, and also, very importantly, of their deepest sense of self, who they are. And so they have all the reasons to keep doing it and to get what they want, get the results they want. Another thing about the unconscious mind, so I mentioned it repeats and it needs this repetition until the habit is installed. But very importantly, it's not the repetition alone. It also has to be fully okay with it. So it has to be in accordance with your beliefs and with your values. If you don't believe you can do it, or if it's not important enough for you, the unconscious mind will not install that behavior. On the contrary, if you do believe you can do it, if you do believe you can learn it in the first place, and if you do believe if it's important for you to do it, then you will, your unconscious mind will learn it really quickly. And, I'd like to give an example from my experience in this sense. Once upon a time, I used to absolutely loathe swimming and I was afraid of water. But discovering, closely, hello Roxana, welcome, that actually, there are safe ways of being in the water, and gradually learning how to control my breathing underwater and how to resurface, to draw breaths, getting into a rhythm, gradually alleviated my fear of water. And also, what was the most important thing for me, discovering that, just doing nothing, relaxing in water, will let the water support me, because it will increase my body surface. And so, Archimedes' law, the water would support me on the surface. So getting rid of that fear of water allowed me to take the necessary steps into learning swimming, becoming convinced that I can do it, and then because I enjoyed it, it became important for me, so it turned into a value. And right now, I'm happy to say that I go swimming almost every single day, and as I've restarted earlier this year. So this is one of the ways it works. Another thing that the unconscious mind does, and actually what I've said earlier naturally takes me to this other role of the unconscious mind, it's constantly programmed to desire more. Oh, hello Anya, welcome. Your unconscious mind will constantly desire more of whatever you teach it is good for you. And this is how both positive, so supportive habits are installed, and not so supporting not so healthy habits are installed as well. Because as long as you do something and you teach yourself, oh, this is good for me, this is nice for me, then your unconscious mind will have all the reasons to support you into doing it. If you, so for instance, I had a client who had a problem with sweets, and the question was, okay, how do you feel like when you're eating sweets? Because their problem was they were doing it uncontrollably, and it had a negative impact on their body, both in terms of how they felt physically, but also in terms of how they looked, their bodily image. And so what the answer was, well, it feels like a reward. I feel like I don't get a reward from pretty much any other area in my life, so when I get sweets, it's like a reward. Now, the question is, how else can you feel rewarded? And they were able to come up with all sorts of other ways where they could get that same feeling. And we talk about feeling, but in very concrete physiological terms, it's actually a neurotransmitter. There was actually a funny meme with the molecule for serotonin and the molecule for dopamine, and it said, technically, the only two things you really like. And so they needed a different pathway towards getting their brain to deliver the same neurotransmitter throughout their whole bodies as it did when they ate sweets. And actually one of those ways was working out constantly. And so I gave them a task, okay, now you start working out. And the sheer process of doing it got them in touch with that feeling through a different pathway. And doing it repeatedly, it taught their unconscious mind that, hey, we can get the same feeling this way. And so we don't actually need to munch on sweets all the time. So it became a self-reinforcing, positive, uplifting cycle. And so they actually became sort of a workout junkie. But, well, it works out for them, pun intended, in the end. So that's another function, another one of the functions of the unconscious mind. And the last role that I want to discuss tonight is the fact that the unconscious mind works best as an integrated whole. Now, some people might experience conflicts. They might say, and this is a very common conflict, well, a part of me wants money, a part of me wants to do something I like. And I feel like if I go for the money, then I won't be able to do something I like because it just doesn't pay. And if I go for something that I like, well, I won't get the money, so I won't be able to support myself, and it sucks. And this is a parts conflict, and I'll get to it more in detail in one of my future talks, because my answer to it is actually a meme that I've recently found myself posting very often to similarly framed conflicts that people post on social media. And it shows a little girl going, why don't we have both? Why not both? So my answer is this, why not both? Actually, instead of asking yourself, well, which one should I go for? In this case, money on the one hand, or on the other hand, doing what I like, or another type of conflict that people very often experience this time in relationships. Well, on the one hand, I want intimacy and connection, but on the other hand, I want freedom and a sense of independence. And I feel that if I go for intimacy in a relationship, I'll lose my freedom. But if I go for freedom, well, then I'll lose the connection. And I just can't have both. I'm struggling choosing between the two. And the question, I would say, it's not which one should I choose, but rather what would it take to have both? Because only when you begin to ask yourself that question do you open up to the possibility of what exactly does it take concretely to make it happen for you. Not only that, it will take you to a vantage point, to discovering a vantage point where you contemplate not just the possibility of both at the same time, but way more possibilities surrounding them, way more possibilities than you could even have imagined previously. Okay, so that's pretty much my talk for tonight, and I'm very happy that you tuned in. I hope you find it all helpful, and I'm looking forward for you to share with all of us how have you been making use of it consciously and concretely, and also if you found any challenges with it all, with the workings of your conscious or unconscious minds. So, very happy to have had you here, and until next time, I wish you all the best. I wish you a fruitful, joyous, prosperous week, and until we see next time, I'm yours truly and delightfully, Adrian Montano, trainer and excellence coach at Mindgrasp. Have a glorious evening and goodbye.